Welcome to Asian Book Club, where we highlight Asian and Asian American authors. We are your hosts,
Jamae and Sabangan.
and I'm Stephen Park, and today we bring you Read 2 of The Moon That Turns You Back by Hala Alyan. So before we go into the read, we have been talking about poetry, and, I always say I don't really know exactly what poetry is. For me, it's something that seems very foreign. But this week, or this past week, I guess I came across something on social media. It was about the death of, well, I guess, firstly, trigger warning with police brutality. About the topic revolves around death, even though it may not talk about it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But the subject matter is Patrick Lyoya, a 26-year-old Congolese immigrant and father of two young daughters, on April 4th, 2022, was murdered in the hands of the police officer Christopher Schur in Michigan. It still hasn't been resolved and the case is currently being worked, but at the current time, the officer is still, not being really punished for the deeds that he had done. But the poetry aspect comes from what I think is maybe an unexpected source, or not even the source, but from an unexpected event. I think this was a public hearing on behalf of the case, and a 13-year-old student from Michigan spoke on behalf of her thoughts about what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
This thought, this thing that she had recited was so beautiful, and to me, this was poetry. So I know we try to focus on Asian American topics, but I think sometimes we do kind of go beyond what those measures are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to be a megaphone or something to magnify her voice a little bit more. So I just kind of wanted to read what she had said. So
Definitely.
this was her words, not mine. This was her words. I'm gonna say it again. I'm 13 years old. All of you are adults. Adults, right? You can drive, you can drink, you can vote. I don't have that. When I asked my mom if I could be dropped off here, her response was, "Is it safe? Is it safe?" We had someone come up here and talk. Don't teach our children to disobey those who are protecting us. I don't see them protecting me. If you want to talk about those protecting me, I look to those who are standing right now, because my trust is in them. I don't trust any of you. I don't trust any of the police officers because you have shown time and time again that we cannot trust you. I go to blank blank high middle school, just voted the top high school in the state. You know what they teach us? They teach us to speak up for yourself. We're IB learners, right? We're smart. None of you are smart. None of you can recognize murderers. You can identify there is a problem, but you cannot fix it. I don't know much about the law. Again, I'm young, but I'm pretty sure an accomplice to a murder should be arrested. And right now, all of you sitting and doing nothing are accomplices to a murder. I am frustrated, and frustrated can't even begin how absolutely terrified I am to live here. I'm expected to raise my kids here. I'm expected to go outside and walk my 5-year-old little brother. God forbid we look too scary. God forbid he accidentally is wearing his hood, and we get the police called on us because we are window shopping to go steal later. I don't want to keep coming here. Trust me, this is not how I want to spend my night. I don't want to come here. I don't want to sit here, and I don't want to have to beg you to stop killing people. That's not what I want to do. I have friends. I have other things I could be doing, and I'm sitting in front of a group of adults who think murder is okay. You can't sit here and tell me you don't think murder is okay because you're allowing it to happen. If you want to talk about God, you want to talk about Jesus. I'm a Christian. I don't know what God some of these people believe in, but it sure ain't mine. I have never read in the Bible where he said, we should allow the people who are supposed to be protecting us to kill us. I'm sorry, maybe I missed that scripture though. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Please, please do not make me sit here and scream another name. Do not sit here and make me beg, and God forbid that name is mine. God forbid that name is any of these people. God forbid. Thank you. Just very powerful words. I don't even think I fully did it justice. I'm pretty sure I didn't do it the full justice because where she spoke from was her heart. The video that we saw is online. So if you wanted to look it up, I'm sure you can find it. It's very powerful. It's very moving. It's as true to life as it gets. And I think that for me felt like absolute poetry.
And the part where none of this is written, it's all spoken from within.
Yeah, yeah, it's incredible. But I think I want you to sit in with that. I think hopefully those words sink in with you. But as they do, let's go over our recommendation for the week.
Our recommendation for the week is Eliana. Eliana is a Palestinian Chilean who blends Arabic music, pop, and R&B. Her bilingual fluency and enchanting vocals transcends musical boundaries, and it's definitely a bop. You can learn more about Eliana on their website at elyana.com. That's ELYANNA.com, and on Instagram at Eliana.
Yep, and that's going to be our recommendation for the week. Okay, so the book in itself carries a lot of emotions. So I know the pre-part of our podcast kind of set us in a darker mood, I guess. But I think that's kind of the mood that you sit in with this book.
For sure. And I think because of the topics, they also make us sit in reality.
Yeah. So we're going to get into our second part of the read. This is The Moon That Turns You Back by Hala Alyan. And in the second read, we read pages 50 through 97, which was Fatima, Divorce Court, to Spoiler. Now, in the first half of our read, we got through about half of this book.
And we explored themes of death and diasporic experience.
Now, did you notice anything different as we got into the second half?
In the second half, I feel like there were harder topics, which is interesting because we already talked about death in the beginning, but it felt as though we went from personal to super personal.
Yeah, and before we go any further, I would like to say some trigger warnings might be around the thought of miscarriage or birthing type of scenarios. She talks a lot about that. There are still some topics about death. So just knowing that this is what this book is about, just be very cognizant and take care of yourself as you read.
Definitely. So, talking about death, we came across a character who seems to be constantly occurring, especially in the second half, and that's Fatima.
Which I didn't really know who Fatima was, to be honest. Like, in my mind, for some reason, it was a fictionalized character, like not a real bodily human.
At first, I thought it was a friend. It felt like someone that the narrator was close to. But later on, I wasn't sure if Fatima was the unborn child.
For me, I thought it was like a split personality kind of situation, but I wasn't really too sure. I could definitely see it being the unborn child as well.
For sure.
Because she does talk to it very personally.
And talks to Fatima often.
Yeah.
Another thing is a change in perspective. Not only is the narrator speaking from a human voice, but there's also times where the perspective comes from the uterus or from the amygdala.
I don't know if I fully understood that, but I trust that it was there.
For sure. In addition, diasporic experience does come back, and specifically it's thinking back to the places that Hala has left. Or at least the narrator has left.
Yeah, and we also continue to get all these interesting forms, and there are carryovers from the first half of the read, which are some of the more interactive poetry with the columns. But then we also see other ones that have like several different pages of poetry based around her conception and the process of her conceiving.
Right.
And how they were medical charts that most of it was kind of grayed out, but there were very specific words that were blacked in.
Yes.
And you kind of really had to pay attention and you had to read really closely to even read any of the print.
Right. And that makes it feel as though there's this haziness. Like the narrator felt hazy in those moments. And that's also expressed in some of the other poetry where the moments that happened during that time were not fully formed or perceived, but happening through a fog.
So let's talk about some of the poetry that we did like. And let's talk about one that you may have liked first.
For sure. I read an interactive fiction in the last episode, and this episode I'm also going to read another interactive fiction because it really punched me in the gut. And it made me think and rethink, and It was an aha moment.
Mm.
In the physical copy, it will be found on pages 70 to 71, and it's called Interactive Fiction Werewolf. I'm going to read the second part, which says, "Sometimes I'm so tired of you, I invent another. House with the right plants in the yard, a trail that leads to another, yours, mine. Like this, a church is built. A heart in its proper cage. Nobody leaves. Nobody tunnels, but the fantasy must end, so look. Look how our fathers left us our pick of exits, how there is always the wolf that breaks you and the wolf, body, and pour it into a hoodie. Some days a haunting of bad sex. The ancestors are unhappy with the fiddle leaf tree, the drain clogged with blonde hair. I always think the tanks have left my body, but here's my pretty head, my tongue a sprig of silver, a comet, the bullet. Language, Arabic, jazz. My mouth changes Fatima's voice into a regime. Every night I rocket myself back to 1999. My nervous system leaps like a deer at your exhale. I am always waiting to eat. I am always swooning for any old light. Little gorge, little magpie. In the darkest dark, I wait for the moon that turns you back."
And she said the title.
Wow.
There's always that moment where the author says the title and it's amazing.
Yes.
But what did you find the most interesting about that poem?
What I found the most interesting about the poem was the angst and how much there was a need for something, a need to fulfill something that was missing.
Hmm. I really like the interactive ones, but I think because of the styling, it made it hard for me to really understand. But I
Hmm.
think just listening to one written out, it definitely made it so that the content seemed clearer.
For sure.
But one of my favorite poems was actually on page 59, and the title is The Length Between July and October, and it was written for Sarah Akant. I don't know who that is, but it was written for this person. So, I'm going to start with the title. It seems like it's a part of the poem, but The Length Between July and October is a poem. Knees on wooden floors, the sun like a porch light in your hands. Baba girl, the tree made a silhouette against the house. I counted the branches in the shadow. The morning is nothing more than your mother's voice. The bed sheets under your body like fresh snow. Even this I learned from you, the perfect mouth of a beer bottle. Haircut over a trash can. Habibti, give me the good mushrooms. Walk me to the edge of the driveway. Show me the rumor inside your lungs. Baba Girl knows her suffering will end, and so Baba Girl loves her suffering. We paint our lips uterus pink. We make lists. We buy underwear the color of the summer, of the ocean, of the dead. So for me, this poem just had a lot of imagery, it had a lot of feeling. So it didn't really give me anything clear in terms of like, oh, she's talking about the feeling of being alone or something. Like it felt like to feel the places that she was describing.
Hmm.
Like when she said the bed sheets under your body like fresh snow, it's like that is such a vivid feeling that as she's going through all these different senses, it kind of like splashes me like paint that kind of brings on different senses.
Definitely. And I can see the juxtaposition of the softness, like the bed sheets of snow, to the harshness of underwear, the color of death.
Right, right. So for the last poem that we wanted to read, it's actually one that we both kind of favorited. It's one that we both liked. I think this one has a lot of meaning. It has a lot of power.
Hmm.
And so this one was, as you read it, this one was one that it not only spoke to me in terms of senses, but there was actually meaning that I understood.
For sure.
And that poem was on page 72 on the hard copy, and it was naturalized.
It reads, "Can I pull the land from me like a cork? I leak all over brunch. My father never learned to swim. I won't say where he was born, I've already said too much. Look, the gardenias are coming in. Look, my love is watching Vice again. Gloss and sound bites. He likes to understand. He plays devil's advocate. My father plays soccer. It's so hot in Gaza. It's so hot under that hospital elevator. That's no place for a child's braid. In the staff meeting, I stretch my teeth into a country when they congratulate me on the ceasefire. As though I don't take Al Jazeera to the bath. As though I don't pray in broken Arabic. It's okay, they like me. They like me in a coffin. They like me when I spit my father from my mouth. There's a whistle. There's a missile fist bumping the earth. I draw a Pantene map on the shower curtain. I break a Klonopin with my teeth and swim. The newspaper says truce and C-Mart is selling peaches again. Woolly in my palms, I've marched on the streets too few times. I've ruined the dinner party with my politics. Sundays are tarot days, Tuesdays are for tacos. There's a leak in the bathroom and I get it fixed in 30 minutes flat. I stop jogging when I'm tired. Nothing can justify why I'm alive, why there's still a June, why I wake and the earth doesn't shake.
Yeah. So once again, powerful imagery,
Mm-hmm.
just flashes of very strong descriptors and feelings and where she is in space, and then powerful imagery on kind of the more in front of you, kind of the more day-to-day structure of things.
Totally. And how there's this struggle of feeling agitated about what's going on in Gaza and Palestine and what's happening in front of the narrator, which is people talking about a ceasefire when in actuality there's no ceasefire happening.
Right, right. So for me, this book was hard.
Mm-hmm.
This book wasn't something that felt fluid. I definitely had to push through it. But what I would say is this book does make me more interested in poetry. The fact that these perspectives were not all lost on me, it does make me more open to reading more poetry books like this.
Mm. Is there a particular kind of poetry that this book makes you want to read, or is it like poetry in general?
I think it just expands my mind from what I felt comfortable with reading,
Mm-hmm.
which is more like stanzas and more in the box English literature poetry kind of stuff.
Definitely. So things with iambic pentameter or something that's easy to follow.
Right, like the structures that are more recognizable to me.
Gotcha.
How did you feel about this?
I felt like there was so much power in this work, and as a poetry nerd, this made me feel even more excited to write poetry as well as read more poems written by Palestinian authors and to find more ways to make it a daily part of my practice.
Mm-hmm. So you really like this. Do you think you'd recommend this book to anybody?
Yes, I would recommend this book to everyone. Even though it might be hard to grasp the concepts the first time around, I encourage you to read and reread this book. Even though it may be difficult the first time around, it's definitely worth the read.
So this is maybe one of the first books we do differ in a little bit.
Mm,
I would recommend this to people who feel more comfortable with poetry. I think for those that are trying to enter the space, this is probably a little bit over our heads. Like, this isn't a nice, easy, soft introduction. There are very strong, distinct ways of using, I think, more modern styles of poetry.
yes.
So I would probably not recommend this for people that are just entering the space. I would say for people that are really interested in looking at poetry, but more topic wise, if you are someone who has struggled with kind of a lot of personal feelings, and she does, like we said, talk about her miscarriage and her conception journey. So if that's something that you kind of want to find space in, then I think this book might be great. But it is harder to digest than prose or other forms of literature, in my opinion.
That makes sense.
But we finish out this book, which means that we get to go to our next book. And before we tell you what it is, we are going to give you our hints of jam.
Our first hint is that it's a part of a young adult fantasy trilogy. Our second hint is that it's a Ghibli-inspired book set in the Meiji era. And our third hint is that the book explores themes of empire, slavery, and freedom.
Yep. And so the book that we're reading is going to be Rebel Skies by Ansei Lin. Now, to find out more about this book, we'll look at the inside cover.
The inside cover reads, Kurara has never known any life other than being a servant on board the Midori, a flying ship serving the military elite of the Mikoshima Empire, a vast realm of floating cities. Kurara also has a secret. She can make folded paper figures come to life with a flick of her finger. When the Midori is attacked, and a Kurara's secret turns out to be a power valued and feared across the empire, a gut-wrenching escape leads her to a new life and a new mentor. Under his tutelage, and with the grudging support and friendship of a new ship's crew, Kurara learns to hunt shikigami, wild paper spirits sought by the imperial princess. But what does the princess really want with the shikigami? Are they merely enchanted figures without will or thought, or are they beings with souls and minds of their own? As fractures begin to appear both across the Empire and within Kurara's understanding of herself, Kurara will have to decide who she can trust. Her fate and the fate of her friends and even the world may rest on her choice, and time is running out.
Yep, and to find out a little bit more about the author, Anne Salin is a writer and librarian who loves fantasy. Her hobbies include studying, gaming, and making origami. She is currently based in London, England. And it seems like she incorporates a lot of that stuff into this book. I'm such a fan of mysticism and fantasy and creating new worlds, so I'm excited to go into our first read. And our first read is going to be
Pages 1 through 87, and that's the prologue and chapter 1 through chapter 10.
Yep. And if you're reading along with us, if you have any poetry books that you really enjoyed, how can people tell us about it?
Y'all can email us at asianbookclubpod@gmail.com or message us on Instagram at asianbookclubpod.
We also have our website, which is asianbookclubpod.com, where we have books that we've read in the past, books that we recommend, and books that we plan to read in the future.
And a great way to support us is to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast.
Otherwise, make sure to be happy, be healthy, and read a book.
Ingat! Bye!